What's going on, y'all? Chuck Nunface here. I want to talk a little bit about these knives that I've got kind of laid out. Chris Reeve Knives. Really kind of regarded as the gold standard in EDC knives, pocket knives, things like that. And the designs are largely unchanged over the years. I mean, the Sebenza, these two right here are Sebenzas. They've been around for, really quite a long time. A couple of years ago when they released the 31, that marked the 31st anniversary of the Sebenza model. And it's gone through changes. There's, the old classic, technically not the classic models, but the original Sebenza, and then, of course, the Sebenza Classic, and the 21 and then the 25, which turned into becoming its own thing in the Inkosi, and now the 31, after the 21 had been around for about 10 years. And really, they're the knife, particularly the Sebenza. It's the knife that really has been what all other pocket knives are compared to and have been for years and years and years. And really for good reason. The construction and the simplicity of them is really, it's quite elegant when you really just think about the simplicity of it. So you've really just got, obviously you've got your blade, single thumb stud, 2 slabs of titanium, no internal milling or anything like that. You've got a barrel spacer out here, a screw, a pivot, and inside the pivot is a bushing and a couple of phosphor bronze washers, and that's pretty much it in a pocket clip. Very, very simple design, to the point where people now, especially folks that are coming into the hobby maybe a little bit later, they don't really understand what the fascination of the Sebenza or Chris Reeve knives in general, when they can get, all these other different types of knives with washers and or bearings and different materials. These are still S35 VN. Now, yeah, they've gone, in the new ones, the 31s, they've gone to S45 VN. And I'm sure MagnaCut is going to be the new standard steel in all the Chris Reeves. But yeah, they, for years and years, they didn't really use any special steels or anything like that. Well, S35 VN, when they introduced that, Chris Reeve specifically, he was integral in developing S35 VN, and changing the formula from S30V and adding niobium and everything else. And there's a bunch of videos on that. There's articles, and Laren and Knife Steel Nerds, can break that stuff like that down a lot better than I can. But he was the one that kind of developed this. It was, to the best of my knowledge, it was one of the first steels designed specifically for cutlery, for pocket knives and things like that. So, but yeah, a lot of the time they didn't really change over the years a whole lot. Different blade styles and everything else. This, of course, is the Tanto, and it's got the micarta inlays, and there's different inlay models out there. There's the Blade HQ exclusive, which is going to be your carbon fiber inlay, and the Knife Art exclusive, which is going to be a carbon fiber scale. So you can do that on the Inkosi and the Sebenzas. And there's different, of course, graphics. This is part of the, I think this one is from 2016, this one. I'm not 100% sure, but, that's the South African animals. So there's the water buffalo right there. I think they did, there was like a leopard one, and there's a rhinoceros one, and everything else. I think there's 4 of them overall, 3 or 4. This one is jokingly named the Sebenza because it's got the hoof print right there, and it kind of looks like a coffee bean. So a buddy of mine on Instagram, Mr. Fisk, calls it the Sebenza, and he's a big Chris Reeve fan. Well, I should say he's a big Sebenza 21 fan, not a Sebenza 31 fan. He does. It's kind of comical, actually, how much he hates the Sebenza 31. But in any case, really, these knives haven't changed a whole lot over the years. I had a Insingo style blade, which is more of a, I don't want to say a Warncliffe, but it's got more of a drop, kind of a sheep's foot style blade, and the point would terminate down here, as opposed to being a drop point blade where the point is a little higher in the knife. And I had one of those for several years, and it was my first Sebenza, and I ended up selling it or trading it or something like that. And that was after they had discontinued the Sebenza 21. And I was like, I'm going to be able to get 21s for years, no big deal. Well, they started drying up about a year after the release of the 31. They really started drying up. So, when I saw one of these available, it wasn't my first choice. I would have preferred just a plain Jane or a PJ model, but it was what it was. And the Tanto, as much as I like the Chris Reeve Knives, does some awesome Tantos. They really do. They've got a very subtle belly and a really great grind on the tip. And I always take mine, for whatever reason, these just beg to be taken to a 0 bevel. So I just go ahead and I do a hand grind on these, on bench stones, and I bring them to a 0 bevel. So there's no secondary, so the grind goes and it terminates directly in the apex, as opposed to what we have right here, where we have the primary bevel and then we have a secondary bevel put on. And these, of course, were sharpened by me also. Just as an aside, they advertise razor sharp from the factory. I think their factory edges leave a lot to be desired. That's not anything that's unique to Chris Reeve Knives. A lot of factory edges are just okay at best, serviceable, but I like to put my own edge. I bring it back just a little bit from factory angle, and I use my KME and I just put a different edge on there. I don't think their edges are all that great from the factory, but really nice hollow grinds, shallow hollow grinds. So you're going to get a lot of life out of these blades. And I believe what they do as well is they'll actually grind it so they'll leave it a little bit thicker at the actual bevel itself. So the hollow will come out like that. They use a large wheel hollow grind, and they'll leave a little bit thicker right here. And so your first few sharpenings, you're actually not even going to be getting any sort of increase in thickness behind the edge through your first couple of sharpenings. So that's also a pretty good technique that they have right there. I mean, additionally, frame lock folders, we see them all the time, but Chris Reeve was the one who developed the frame lock folder. So before that, everything was liner locks and lockbacks, and every locking system on a folding knife has its advantages and disadvantages. I mean, essentially, when you have a folding knife, you're already at a disadvantage because it's never going to be as strong as a fixed blade is. So everything's going to be a compromise once you break the blade. Essentially, that's what you're doing when you have a folding pocket knife. But he developed that system of that we see in pretty much everything. It's actually called the Reeve Integral Lock, the RIL. And so that's what a frame lock folder, that's where it came from. That's where they all started. So, I mean, just the utter simplicity of the design. In fact, breaking one of these open, I'm not going to do it in this video. There's plenty of other videos out there on 21s, 31s, Chris Reeves in general. I just kind of wanted to talk about them a little bit and give, just my opinions on the line and the ones that I have, and just what I see as value within them and why I like them. But yeah, when you break them down, you'll see the washers, the perforated washers, which are, PP washers, and you're going to be able to, they'll hold your grease, your lube in there really nicely. And they're even shaped differently, especially you'll notice on the Inkosi, if you break that one down, the washer is specifically designed to fit up over the pivot and everything else. So it's really cool how they do it. They've done a lot of things that, certainly at the time was considered innovative, and really nobody else is doing that still, to this day. I think a lot of makers and a lot of companies will kind of take, I don't want to say the easy way out by using bearings, because it's just what's more popular right now. People want that kind of, drop shut action, which you're not going to get on a Chris Reeve. I didn't even open it right that time, but you're not going to get that once you take pressure off the lock bar. It's not going to just drop shut. But I mean, bearings are just unbelievably forgiving when it comes to it. Doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't take a whole lot of skill to execute a real snappy or a real fidgety action with a bearing knife. But when you come up and you hear people talk about the smoothness of the opening and being like it's like rubbing two pieces of glass together that have a layer of oil or Crisco in between them or something like that. It's really something that you have to feel and experience. And many times you have to grow to appreciate it because you're going to be used to that snappy bearing action and the drop shut and everything else. And it takes a little time, you know, to get used to this. Like when I first handled a Sebenza 21, I didn't think it was anything all that special. But over time, it really grew on me. And so it's something that I certainly appreciate quite a bit now. You know, moving on, the Inkosi was developed when they were actually changing the Sebenza 21. They're going to be changing it to the Sebenza 25. So that would be 25-year anniversary of the Sebenza. And so they changed it. They made a few differences, and you know, they moved the pocket clip over a little bit so it wasn't resting directly on the lock bar. They put these finger grooves in there, which a lot of people initially don't like. Some people probably still don't like them, but I mean, they really work just perfectly. The blade, there's more of a hump right here. The blade stock thickness was increased. I can't remember where this is 0.125 and this is 0.14, I believe. So it's a little bit thicker and a little more robust. And of course, this is the Inkosi, not the Sebenza 25, but the Sebenza 25, they would kind of trash that moniker and make it its own thing, which is where the Inkosi came from. And they just kept doing the Sebenza. So there were differences within the knives where it was enough of a difference, and the Sebenza purists didn't want to see that model be changed to the degree that it was in the construction, because they went away from a bushing pivot. So the Inkosi's doesn't have a bushing pivot system. So you have your pivot post in the Sebenza, for instance. You have your pivot post, and then a bushing goes over that post, and then you have your other pivot goes in there, very similar to the old Shirogorov Hatis. But in any case, this moved away from that, and it had a stop pin right there, and which of course this does too, but it went from more of an adjustable pivot, where the Sebenza, you kind of crank everything down, not super tight, but just hand tight, and then just maybe a little bit more till you get a little bit of flex in your wrench, and you just set it and forget it, and you're good to go. They never included Loctite or anything like that, because the model really doesn't need it. However, the Inkosi, you got a little bit more of a user adjustable experience where, yeah, you can flick these out, but you know, according to Chris Reeve, they were never intended to be flicked out. They were intended to be slow rolled out. You know, the whole argument that it's going to accelerate wear and yada yada yada. I just don't think they really wanted to deal with the you know, potential warranty calls of people, you know, opening their knives fast and everything else. But if you look at that stop pin, it's fairly robust. It's really not going to cause that much of an issue. But anyway, I kind of digress on that. But it was more of an adjustable experience, and so rather than you know, keep the Sebenza 25, they continued to the 21, and just they introduced the Inkosi as its own thing. And really, that's just such a beautiful knife. I mean, I've said on Instagram the past couple of times, but recently, that if I had to sell all my knives and I can only keep one, I'd probably keep the Inkosi. Reason being is, you know, it's oddly enough, it's not even a top 5 knife for me. It's not, but it does so many things so well. It's definitely a do-all knife. I like the fact that the blade stock is a little bit thicker. It gives me a little bit more, at least in my own head, a sense that it's more robust and able to handle, you know, those hard use tasks. And then of course the grind obviously is going to be very good. The construction is still very simple. Can really kind of go and do anything that you need it to do. Plus the fact that it's got a beautifully smooth action and just flicks out. It's different. It's different than the way the Sebenza is. The Sebenza is nice, but it doesn't have that same flicking action that the Inkosi has. And that's probably due to the fact that you can kind of adjust the pivot and then use a little Loctite and set it the way you want. But God, it's just so smooth. It just flicks right out so beautifully. And I would probably just end up keeping this because it can really do anything that you would ask it to do. You know, and lastly, the ones that I have the, this is the Umnumzan. And so this is the harpoon style. A lot of people call it a drop point, but really it's a harpoon. And this is kind of more of their tactical type of folder. It's got the glass breaker right there. And Interestingly, and they went with the Inkosi and the Umnumzan. They use a ball pivot, so they have a ceramic detent ball that's press fit into the lock bar right there, and that acts as it make contact with the blade as opposed to just the lock bar itself making contact with the blade. So it's a different type of locking mechanism. In fact, it'll probably be easier to understand if you can see the wear pattern on that one as opposed to the wear pattern on the Sebenza. They're very different, and that's due to the ceramic ball lock that is press fit into there. In fact, I think, yeah, you can see it on that one really well. So that is actually what makes contact with the blade and locks everything up. So the Umnumzan is the same thing. It's a little bit more difficult to see on this one, but you can see the same type of lock up there and where that ceramic detent ball interfaces with the tang of the blade. So yeah, anyway, this was their more, I guess, tactical version and foray into that. Once again, this one actually I got from a buddy of mine on Instagram, Geared Up Dad, who loaned me the Hinderer Fire Tack that I posted a couple of months ago, and then he got it in turn from Super Steel Steve, if I could say that right. And he's got a channel here on YouTube as well. So this is his old one. So this one's S35 yen. This is S45 yen. It's a newer version. These are both S35, both of the Sebenzas. This one's also S35. Like I say, I'm sure Magna Cut is going to be the new thing that they'll be using. But yeah, this is just it's just a different style. It's kind of in the same vein as the Inkosi with the blade stock thickness and everything else. This one does not have the internal blade stop. These thumb studs actually act as the blade stop and the stabilizers and everything else. But a lot of the construction is very simple. Barrel spacer, external blade stops, perforated washers, different sizes, custom made and everything else. And just really super simple, beautiful, elegant designs, perfectly functioning. I mean, they're gonna last you generations. I mean, there's really no reason feasibly that these can't be, if you take care of them and you use them as they're supposed to be used, and you don't beat on them or abuse them, there's no reason these can't be generational knives that you can pass on to children and grandchildren and everything else. And so I just wanted to share some of my thoughts about this company and the models that I have from Chris Reeve Knives. Just what I see as the value of them, and maybe there's plenty of other videos about Chris Reeves out there that you can check out that are going to be more in-depth and more review oriented. But just wanted to share some thoughts on these. Let me know in the comments what you think about. Have you tried a Chris Reeve? Have you gotten into CRKs at all? Do you prefer the action? Do you understand, or do you see the benefit in these types of designs, or do you just think they're antiquated and it's kind of just outdated? Go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram at Chuck_Nunface. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. That really helps me out a lot. It gets my videos out there. YouTube will be fool the algorithm a little bit and prompt YouTube to kind of show my videos and get them out there so more people can check them out. Yeah, let me know what you think. I appreciate y'all checking it out. Thanks a lot.